Good day, people. This is ADEC. ADEC is a ADEC is an academy that actually specializes with different faculties. We are an organization that focuses on different faculties. It could be management, economics, philosophy, humanitarian, school of thought, which is like a philosophy of thinking, and we specialize with African Renaissance. We specialize with many different faculties. But today we are actually continuing with our lectures. Our lectures that basically focus on academia, which is whereby we mostly actually present, we present all the philosophers that were actually the champions behind the academic, which is the philosophers that actually gave the introduction of the sets that must be followed. So we started with Socrates, Plato, and many others, but today we are actually focusing on Saint Thomas Aquinas. But today I just want to bring you back that the title of this lecture, it's actually the evolution of philosophy argued. But today we are focusing on Thomas Aquinas. He's being called Saint Thomas Aquinas, but we are going to hear how did that happen, or perhaps we actually are going to look in 5 pointers. The first pointer is to know him. The second pointer is to understand what was his contribution, and the other one would be actually who did he work with and what did actually he came or perhaps brought in the world of philosopher. And the other pointer is essentials, or perhaps the most actually deep insights about his life as a philosopher, and what did he picked up that he needed to perhaps adopt, and actually his strong point. And the other part would be what other values can we learn from, or perhaps what did he develop, what can be learned from his exercises that he applied as a philosopher. And then the last one would be a point whereby we'll be throwing our critique as ADEC, because the main objective for ADEC Academy to actually tap into, or perhaps to bring these philosophical ideas from this philosopher, is to understand, because when you look at academic, you realize that there's quite a lot of things that are currently happening, which is we think they are currently happening, but when you look deeper, there's actually a lot of things that have been left unattended to. But we are going to actually look at that as time goes by, so that we can understand and all of that. So who is Thomas? Who is Saint Thomas Aquinas? He is actually a late medieval thought. Saint Thomas Aquinas was a prolific writer. Though he lived to just 49 years old, he produced a philosophy as broad and systematic as Aristotle's. In fact, Thomas' reputation is based largely on his ability to take Aristotle's philosophy by the 13th century, translated into Latin across Europe, and join it to Christian thought. Let's quickly look at his life. Saint Thomas Aquinas was born in Roccasecca, not far from Naples, in 1225. At the age of 5, he was placed by his parents in the Benedictine Abbey of Monte Cassino as an oblate, which is lay person dedicated to religious life. He made his first studies remaining in the monastery from 1230 to 1239, when Emperor Frederick II expelled the monks from there. He went to the University of Naples in the autumn of the same year, being then Being then 14, at the age of 19, Aquinas joined the order of preachers of the newly formed Dominican order. By the way, Dominican order was the introduction of the preaching of the religious principles and all of that. So it was actually that time when the beginning of like teaching the religion was actually other people critiquing because it was new. They could not understand its blueprint at that time. So that's when Thomas Aquinas actually tapped into that. By 1245, he was attending the University of Paris and still in the Dominican order. There he met Saint Albert the Great, who was his teacher. Aquinas edited Saint Albert's lectures on Aristotle's ethics. We're going to look at that as time goes by. He eventually taught theology at the University of Paris. He left Paris for Italy in 1259 and taught theology at the Stadium Curie attached to the Papal Court until 1268. That is enough. We want to understand who was he, how other people were viewing. That is the fact. St. Thomas Aquinas was known as the dumb ox, not because he was stupid, but because he was a quiet and very large, rotund person in class. He would sit quietly and absorb information and not get involved in vigorous discussion. He wrote some 25 volumes in his short life. So this is the insight, or perhaps like it's a fact, because he was like that. But we're not going to actually talk more on that. We're going to focus who was he, and then what was his contribution. That is a third pointer. His life had been devoted to study, to teaching, and the pursuit and the defense of truth. In 1323, within a half century of his death, he was officially declared a saint by the church. In 1879, Pope Leo XIII recommended the philosophy of Thomas Aquinas as a model. Take note of that for Catholic thought. He now enjoys the status of church doctor. Only Augustine has had an equal influence on the thought of the Western Church. Only Augustine has had an equal influence on the thought of the Western Church. In his encyclical of August 4, 1879, Pope Leo XIII stated that Aquinas' theology was a definitive exposition of Roman Catholic doctrine. Thus, he directed the clergy to take the teachings of Aquinas as the basis of their theological positions. Also, Leo XIII decreed that all Roman Catholic seminaries and universities must teach Aquinas' doctrine. So we stop there. We know he was, how did he become a saint? He was actually known as a saint by his church, and he was a church doctor. And his teachings were actually adopted as a Catholic, as a Catholic teachings and all of that. We're not going to look at other pointers of synthesizing scripture and Aristotle. We're not going to look at faith and reason, because we know he was just a religious person. He was actually, that was after he died, when his teachings were adopted as a sort of like a creed that can be actually teach in Roman Catholic. We're not going to look at that. Let's look at the essential of his life. That is a fourth pointer. Thomas Aquinas did for Aristotle what Augustine did for Plato, making the pagan philosopher appear to seamlessly blend right in with teachings of the Christian church. Aquinas is regarded by many as the thinker who overcame the discrepancy between faith and the reason. He distinguished theology from philosophy. Theology gives you knowledge through faith and revelation, and philosophy gives you knowledge through the natural powers of the intellect, common to all men. Prior to Aquinas, Plato was widely available to early medieval. We know that. Now we want to understand one of his 5 arguments for God's existence. Aquinas taught that reflection on familiar features of the physical world affords evidence of God's existence. So he attempted 5 proofs to demonstrate the existence of God. Recall that Anselm had begun his ontological proof with the idea of a greatest conceivable being. Okay, let's look at the essentials. Aquinas rejected Anselm's ontological argument, even if it be granted that everyone understands his name God to signify what is said. That which a greater cannot be thought, it does not follow that what is signified by the name exists in the nature of things, but only that it exists in the apprehension of the understanding. Okay, in his casual arguments, he's stating clearly that in the first way, Aquinas writes that it is certain and it is clear from sense experience that some things in this world are moved, which is like that's the same exercise that Aristotle actually spoke about. Let's look at his ethics, which is our last pointer. Yeah, his ethics, like Aristotle's ethics, the ethics of Thomas Aquinas are teleological. This means he believed that a good life is directed towards some sort of a goal, direction, and all of that. So, yeah, we know that. And let's look at his significance. At various times, St. Thomas Aquinas has been ridiculed for being Aristotle's baptized. To his detractors, Aquinas forced Aristotle to fit into his own. That is enough. So, that is where we come in. We come in as ADEC, we're critiquing. Our point of critique, maybe we can give 3, starting from his life. From his life, we don't hear that he was actually qualified. We don't hear that he obtained his qualifications. Instead, he was a teacher. Yes, he attended university, but he was just he hasn't qualified into anything. Point number 1. Point number 2, he took all of Aristotle's teachings and he popularized them. That is a point number 2. Point number 3, if you listen to his teaching, like to the last point of essentials, Thomas Aquinas did for Aristotle, right? What Augustine did for Plato. So meaning that he was a philosopher that took an exercise for exercises of Aristotle, which is, but we don't hear what did he do. What did he do for the people at that time? Instead, he took everything that Aristotle did at that time. We want to understand what was his contribution in academic. What did he change? What did he produce? What did he develop? Nothing. So it's okay, we're going to actually end this lecture here and actually understand that, these are things that we need to look at, and we need to actually focus more on these things so that they can be able to help us to understand and distinguish the development of academic from one philosopher to another, and change from one philosopher to another, and the contribution that he did from his society and from his time of studies, and what did he actually challenge at that time. There is nothing that he challenged. My critique as ADEC is that at least he should have done something in terms of proving that he has actually thought. He has thought deeply about what he has actually had to actually bring, as sort of like making a difference to other people's life. Thank you, people. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.